My atheist boyfriend forbade my faith, but he doesn't know what a former arms-dealing priest is capable of. I still remember my grandmother vividly. She was always dressed in that modest cotton dress with delicate printed flowers, and she would lean over a small wooden table decorated with photos, rosaries, and little flickering candles. She lovingly referred to it as her altar, though it was nothing like the grand altars you might find in a magnificent cathedral or elaborate shrine. It was small and unpretentious, tucked away in a corner of her humble living room. I used to sit on the floor and watch the dancing flames, their gentle light reflecting in her serene, caring eyes. Even as a child, I sensed that something quietly sacred filled that moment, a soft, hallowed space, bridging the gap between the everyday and the unseen. Years later, when I moved into my own apartment, I recreated a similar altar. It was about the size of a bedside table, complete with a single drawer. In the beginning, it held only one candle, a cherished photo of my grandmother, and a little note she had once written. Gradually, I added meaningful keepsakes, images of saints I had grown to love, small statues, a few prayer cards, and little mementos from my travels. It never felt like a rigid religious ritual. Rather, it became a space for memory, tribute, and personal reflection. My grandmother had always taught me to honor our ancestors, to pause and appreciate the deeper threads of life, and to safeguard a spot dedicated to gratitude and contemplation. I never considered myself overtly religious. I wasn't raised in an extremely devout household, yet spirituality was always a quiet presence in my life. My grandmother embodied a warm, inclusive faith. She never forced her beliefs on anyone, nor judged others for differing views. I inherited that perspective, seeing spirituality as an intimate dialogue with one's roots and experiences rather than strict adherence to dogma. This personal altar never interfered with my romantic relationships, at least not until I met Tommy. Partners and dates would sometimes notice it, their reactions ranging from curious glances to casual indifference. An ex even asked if I prayed every day, and I'd simply replied, "Not exactly." Sometimes I would light a candle or arrange fresh flowers there, and other times I would simply pass by and feel comforted. There was no grand ceremony or expectation that others participate. For me, it was a private ritual of remembrance. Then I met Tommy at a friend's birthday party, a rooftop celebration filled with pulsating music, flowing drinks, and twinkling lights. Tommy was by the railing, quietly admiring the city skyline with a gentle smile on his face. I joined him, and we began chatting effortlessly, from the host to our reasons for being in the city, to sharing humorous anecdotes. We connected immediately. In the following weeks, we embarked on a series of spontaneous dates, strolling through art districts, spending leisurely afternoons in cozy coffee shops, and enjoying quiet evenings on my couch or his. He was a computer science graduate student, always juggling research and coding, while I worked as a freelance illustrator and designer, which gave us the flexibility to see each other often. I quickly discovered his warm, earnest smile, quirky humor, and the thoughtful way he asked questions that made me feel truly at ease. Even when we disagreed about politics, movies, or even the contentious subject of pineapple on pizza, he always listened intently. At first, I mentioned my altar only in passing. Tommy would merely nod in mild curiosity. I assumed it was all in the background. Despite identifying as an atheist, a fact that never troubled me in past relationships, I thought he wouldn't mind my quiet rituals. Occasionally, if he came over while I was lighting a candle or arranging the altar, he would cast a curious glance, but he never expressed disapproval. Our first year together passed in a smooth, joyful rhythm. Shared brunches, Netflix marathons, meeting each other's friends, and even the occasional silly argument that ended in kisses and apologies. As our anniversary, Tommy suggested we move in together once our leases expire. "We practically live at each other's places anyway," he reasoned while glancing around my apartment. "It'll save us money and let us wake up together every day." I was excited at the prospect, imagining a cozy shared life. I never imagined, however, that my altar, a small, unassuming piece of furniture, would ignite such tension. Just a few nights after Tommy proposed cohabitation, we were discussing potential neighborhoods in my living room. Tommy sat with his laptop open, scanning listings, while I was tidying up near the altar. Without looking up, he asked, "So what about that table thing? Are you planning to bring it when we move in?" "It's my altar," I replied gently, smiling. "I always bring it with me. It's small enough to fit anywhere." He hesitated, his lips tightening. "Yeah, but I'm not sure I want religious stuff in our home," he said, in a low, measured tone. "I don't believe in any of it. It just feels odd to have it around." I turned toward him, startled. "But you've seen it here all these months. Does it only bother you now?" "It's just," he sighed. "I never thought about it before, but if we're sharing a space, then it's our home. I'd prefer it to be free of religious imagery. You know, I'm an atheist." A rush of confusion and anxiety hit. "Tommy, you've always been an atheist. I'm not asking for a church-like setup. This is simply my way of remembering my grandmother and connecting with my heritage." He set his laptop aside, looking visibly uncomfortable. I know, but I don't want to come home and see candles and saints. It feels like I'd be betraying my own beliefs. Something in his choice of words, betraying his beliefs, hurt me deeply. I'm not asking you to adopt my practices, I said softly. I'm asking for your respect for something that is very important to me. I'm not trying to convert you or change your mind. Tommy shrugged, his tone apologetic yet firm. I'm sorry, but I just think religion is silly, and I don't want it in our shared space. It feels like you're prioritizing it over our life together. That cut like a knife. I'm not placing religion above you, I insisted quietly, fighting back my hurt. This altar is a deeply personal space, a way to honor my grandmother, my ancestors, and my own history. It has nothing to do with converting. But Tommy was resolute. He continued arguing that he wanted a strictly secular environment, insisting that religious objects made him uneasy. I even suggested we place it in a less conspicuous spot, a corner of the bedroom or a small side room, but he still refused. We went back and forth for nearly half an hour until he finally left with a resigned shrug and a perfunctory kiss on the cheek. I remained standing there, staring at the altar, overwhelmed by how something so small could cause such strife. I wondered if I should pack it away, hide it, or even get rid of it. But the idea left me feeling empty. My grandmother had always said that an altar is where you keep what nourishes your spirit, and giving it up would feel like abandoning that connection. The real question was, would Tommy force me to choose? In desperation, I turned to Reddit for advice. The responses poured in, some urging me to leave him immediately, labeling his stance as controlling, others suggesting that our incompatibility was irreparable. Yet there were also thoughtful comments empathizing with Tommy's perspective, proposing that perhaps he just needed to understand the non-dogmatic nature of my practice better. A few trolls even launched into rants about religion being a delusion. But overall, many people genuinely tried to help me figure out how to communicate with him. Before I could summarize the advice for Tommy, he discovered my post. One evening, I received a text from him. I saw your Reddit post. I want to talk. My stomach churned with dread. Would he be furious? Or would he become defensive when he saw the negative comments? When Tommy arrived, he appeared more remorseful than angry. We sat together, and he admitted he had read not only my post but most of the comments too. I guess I've never really thought about how I feel about religion, he confessed. Growing up, my dad ridiculed it, calling it superstitions. So I learned to dismiss it entirely. I nodded, relieved. That explains your discomfort, but please understand, for me, it's not about rigid belief. It's about memory and connection. It's a personal tribute to my grandmother. He looked thoughtful. I see that now. Reading those comments helped me understand that, for some people, altars aren't about they're about culture, history, and personal expression. I'm sorry I asked you to get rid of it. I didn't realize it meant so much to you. Tears welled in my eyes. You have no idea how much that means to me, I said. He gently took my hand. I still consider myself an atheist, but I want to understand what your altar represents. Maybe we can figure out a way to have it in our place without it feeling intrusive. I smiled through my tears. I'd love that. I'm happy to keep it in a private corner or even a spare room. I just don't want to hide it because it's part of who I am. After that heartfelt conversation, everything shifted. Tommy began researching personal shrines and cultural practices of ancestor veneration online. Sometimes he would text me interesting facts. Did you know some cultures use altars as daily journals? Or, I read that many people keep photos of their ancestors along with candles. I shared with him more about my grandmother's gentle spirituality and how certain saints or images reminded me of qualities I admired. We continued looking for an apartment together, and by then we had agreed that I would bring my altar with me. While touring potential apartments, Tommy's eyes would sometimes betray a flicker of nervousness if the space was too open, without a natural nook for such a piece. But we reassured each other, and eventually, we found a bright, airy apartment on a quiet street. It had a cozy living room, a decent kitchen, one bedroom, and a bonus space that could serve as an office or reading. Near the front window, we discovered a small alcove that seemed perfect for a little table or shelf, ideal for my altar. We signed the lease and began packing. As we sorted through our belongings, Tommy found a small box of tea lights and asked, "Do these go with your altar things?" "Yes," I replied. "I usually keep them in the drawer to light when I feel like reflecting." He handed them over, pausing. "Once we move in, would it be all right if I lit a candle sometimes, maybe in memory of my grandpa or something?" That tender gesture nearly brought me to tears. "That would mean so much to me, Tommy. Of course it isn't about belief in an afterlife. It's just a way to honor someone," I said. He nodded with a small smile. "I think it might bring me some comfort too." And I liked the soft glow. Moving day arrived, and we lugged couches, chairs, and countless boxes into our new home with the help of friends. At one point, Tommy and a friend carefully carried the altar, wrapped in blankets to protect it, into the apartment and set it in the alcove. I paused to run my fingertips over the smooth wood, feeling a sense of symbolism. The very thing that had almost driven us apart was now being lovingly placed in our shared home. I turned to Tommy, and he offered me a soft smile. "It looks nice here," he said. Later, when the apartment was quiet and the boxes were mostly unpacked, we took a moment to be alone among the remnants of our move. Tommy lit one of the tea lights on the altar and its gentle flame brought back memories of my grandmother's quiet rituals. I whispered a quiet thank you for the chance to share our life, for our willingness to work through our differences, for the beauty of acceptance. Tommy wrapped an arm around my waist. I'm sorry for how I handled it. I wasn't trying to hurt you. I was just scared and ignorant. I understand, I replied softly. Thank you for trying to learn and for listening. From that day forward, the altar ceased to be a source of conflict. It evolved into a peaceful corner of comfort for both of us. Tommy still sometimes said, I don't really believe in an afterlife, yet he would light a candle in memory of a loved or simply to enjoy the soft light. I would see him standing quietly by the altar, gazing at the flame, and it became a shared space of reflection and understanding. When friends visited, they would often comment on the gentle aroma of incense or the peaceful glow of the candles. I'd explain the significance of the altar, a tribute to my grandmother and a space for reflection. And Tommy would add, she has a beautiful tradition of honoring her past, and I support that. If anyone teased him about his atheism, he would shrug and say, I still am an atheist. I just appreciate the meaning it holds for her. And for me. Now, that was our real victory. We both maintained our core beliefs while creating a home where each of us felt comfortable. Over time, we even began to discuss spiritual practices more broadly, how one could engage in rituals without dogma, how lighting a candle could simply be a moment of mindfulness. Tommy even joked about constructing an altar for science, with photos of famous scientists or symbolic tokens of discovery. I laughed, picturing a little corner featuring Albert Einstein or Marie Curie. Deep down, I appreciated that he was open to the idea that rituals, however unconventional, could have profound meaning. In quieter moments, Tommy would share how his perspective on spirituality had broadened. He admitted that he once thought rituals were merely silly, but now he recognized they could provide emotional clarity. He said the peace he felt after lighting a candle was real, a way to process feelings and find calm. His journey softened his earlier rejection of anything spiritual, and our differences began to meld into a mutual respect. As time passed, we celebrated our milestones together. On our second anniversary, I recalled how close we had come to a major fight over the altar. Something that could have shattered our budding relationship. Tommy admitted, sometimes I wonder if I'd lost you if I'd remained stubborn about it. I kissed him and said, I'm grateful you were willing to learn and compromise. We toasted with glasses of water, silently acknowledging that love could expand our horizons and bridge our differences. Our daily life was not without its mundane squabbles over budgeting, chores, or other small issues. But the altar was no longer a flashpoint. It had become a symbol of how we could embrace our distinct worldviews while building a shared home. After about 6 months of living together, a close friend asked, so, how's the altar situation? I smiled and explained that we had found a way to make it work. She marveled that we had managed such a transformation, and her words made me feel that we had taken a significant leap together. Tommy had unlearned some deep-seated biases, and I had learned to articulate my beliefs more openly. A true bridging of gaps. Sometimes I would find Tommy sitting near the soft glow of the altar, remarking that it was just a nice light to read by, though I knew it meant so much more. It stood as proof that even those with different beliefs could create a sanctuary of shared meaning. I would often remember my grandmother's words about altars being more than religious objects. They were places where you kept the people you loved present, both physically and in memory. I like to think she would be proud that we had made room for both our pasts and our new life. Then, a few months after settling in, Tommy received news that his father had been hospitalized. Though the initial complications were minor, it stirred up deep feelings in Tommy, who had long struggled with his father's fierce anti-religious views despite his deep love for him. Tommy spent several evenings visiting his dad in the hospital and returned home visibly subdued. One night, as he set down his keys, I noticed his red, tear-streaked eyes. I wrapped my arms around him as he whispered, he's so stubborn. He claims he's fine, but I'm really scared he won't listen to the doctors. He laughed shakily, adding, he has a conspiracy for everything. I'm scared it won't be enough. He then glanced toward our shared altar, his eyes reflecting an unfamiliar emotion. Do you ever light a candle for someone you're frustrated with? Or is it only for those you love without conflict? He asked soft. I paused, considering his question. Sometimes I do. It isn't about summoning supernatural help. It's a gesture of hope, a way to wish safety and healing upon someone, I explained. Tommy stared at the altar, then carefully retrieved a tea light from the drawer and lit it. As he set it down, he crossed his arms and looked at the flickering flame. I don't know if it really helps, he murmured, but somehow it makes me feel less powerless. I took his hand gently. That's exactly why I do it. It's a small ritual that helps ground my emotions. That night, we sat together in the quiet glow of the tea light, not praying in any traditional sense, but silently offering our hopes for his father's recovery. It was a reminder that even without religious belief, small rituals could bridge the gap between our emotions and the chaos around us. In that moment, I saw Tommy soften further. He began to understand that compassion and ritual were human needs, not confined to any single worldview. Over the ensuing days, Tommy's father gradually improved. Tommy started visiting him at home, helping with chores, and each time he returned, he seemed calmer after a brief moment by the altar. Those moments deepened Tommy's acceptance of something that he had once dismissed entirely. He realized that while he might never believe in gods or angels, a ritual can still offer solace during life's uncertainties. This shared altar gradually became a part of our emotional language. Whenever one of us experienced something significant, a personal triumph, a loss, or a moment of deep reflection, we would mark it by lighting a candle or placing a new token on the altar. When I secured a major illustration contract, I lit a candle in gratitude. Tommy joined me with a small smile, admitting that while he might not believe in cosmic forces, celebrating my success felt right. When one of Tommy's college friends passed away unexpectedly, we set a photo on the altar for a week, honoring his memory with a candle each evening. Even some of Tommy's atheist friends, though initially skeptical, came by quietly to pay their respects. It wasn't about religion at all. It was about having a dedicated space for our shared humanity, a place to turn when words failed or when feelings overflowed. Gradually, Tommy stopped using terms like weird or superstitious to describe it. Instead, he began calling it our corner of reflection or the memory table. That shift meant more to me than any grand gesture. It signified that he no longer saw it as a threat, but as part of the home we were building together. I often recalled my grandmother's gentle guidance, how she would hum while tending to her altar and speak fondly of those who had passed. I hoped that, in some way, she could see how Tommy and I had navigated our differences, from conflict to understanding, and that she would be proud of our mutual respect. Our journey taught me that altars, whether physical or symbolic, mirror our deepest values. They capture the love we have for those who are gone, the gratitude we hold for those who remain, and the dreams we nurture for the future. Tommy's evolution showed me that skepticism need not be an obstacle to empathy, and that sometimes the smallest acts, like lighting a candle, can foster profound connection. A few months later, as the anniversary of our move-in approached, we hosted a small dinner with close friends. Amid soft candlelight from both the dining table and our altar, stories were shared about how far we'd come. After dinner, a friend named Camilla, who identified as agnostic, asked if she could light a candle for her ailing mother. Even though the altar was originally my space, Tommy immediately agreed, saying, "Of course, we do that all the time." I watched as she lit her candle, tears slipping down her cheeks as she whispered a quiet wish for her mother's recovery. Tommy caught my eye and smiled soft, a silent acknowledgement of the journey we had endured from that heated argument about the altar to this moment of shared solace. After our guests left, Tommy and I lingered near the gently burning candles. I pressed my hand against his chest, feeling his steady heartbeat. "I'm so proud of us," I whispered. "Of you especially." He wrapped an arm around me. "Proud?" he repeated. "Yes," I replied, leaning closer, "because we turned what could have torn us apart into something that deepened our bond. You opened your heart and tried to understand, despite your own upbringing, and that means everything to me." He pressed his forehead against mine, eyes closed. "I'm proud of us too. I used to think any spiritual practice was just nonsense. Now I see it's a way for people to express what's too deep for words." We stood there in silence, watching the soft glow of the candles. In that quiet moment, I felt a deep unity, as if we were both tending to a space that celebrated our differences rather than erased them. It was proof that even with contrasting beliefs, love could create a common ground. Time moved on. Birthdays, small celebrations, and even unexpected hardships passed, and our little altar remained a constant in our home. Whenever someone asked, "How can an atheist and someone spiritual share a home?" I would point to that altar, a swirl of star maps mixed with the gentle wisp of candle smoke, photos, and tokens that together wove the tapestry of our life. The answer, I'd say, is simple. Give each other the space to be who you truly are, with no forced conversions or compromises on your identity. That is the essence of our story. A small, humble altar that once sparked conflict became a symbol of dialogue, respect, and union. Even as life presented new challenges, the altar continued to gather our joys and sorrows, a constant reminder that true harmony isn't about uniformity, but about embracing differences with empathy and love. Not long after we settled in, Tommy received distressing news that his father had been hospitalized. Though the condition was initially minor, a heart complication that doctors assured could be managed, it stirred complex feelings in Tommy, who had long struggled with his father's vehement anti-religious views, despite his deep care for him. Over several evenings, Tommy visited his dad in the hospital, and one night, visibly upset, he returned home with red, tearful eyes. I silently embraced him as he confessed, "He's so stubborn. He says he's fine, but I'm really worried he won't listen to the doctors." He laughed shakily, adding, "He has a conspiracy theory for everything. I'm scared he won't take his health seriously." Tommy then glanced toward our altar with an emotion I couldn't quite decipher. "Do you ever light a candle for someone you're frustrated with, or Is it only for those you revere? He asked softly. I paused. Sometimes, yes. It's not about invoking a supernatural force. It's a ritual of hope. A way to wish for someone's well-being even when you're upset, I replied. He retrieved a tea light from the drawer and lit it, setting it carefully in a small dish. Standing back, he crossed his arms and stared at the flickering flame. I don't know if it really makes a difference, he murmured, but it makes me feel a bit less helpless. I reached for his hand. That's exactly why I do it. It helps me process my feelings. A quiet ritual to ground me. That night, as we sat together in the subdued glow, we weren't reciting prayers, but silently sending our best wishes to his father. It was a shared moment that bridged our differences, showing that rituals can be purely human, offering comfort in times of uncertainty. In the following days, Tommy's father gradually improved, and Tommy found solace in visiting and even doing small tasks around the house. Each time, he would pause by the altar, lighting a new candle to release his pent-up anxiety. Those small acts helped Tommy soften his earlier rejection of anything spiritual, proving that even an atheist can find meaning in a ritual when it speaks to the heart. Our altar soon became a shared repository of our emotional journeys. It was there for personal triumphs, quiet grief, and moments of reflection. When I landed a major contract, I lit a candle in gratitude, and Tommy joined me, smiling and saying, I still don't think the candle talks to the universe, but celebrating you feels right. When one of Tommy's friends passed away, we placed his photo on the altar for a week, honoring him with a daily candle. Even Tommy's skeptical friends began to appreciate the space, a quiet corner where love and memory were celebrated. It wasn't about religion. It was about creating a space for our shared humanity. Over time, Tommy stopped dismissing the altar as silly, and instead referred to it as our corner of reflection, or the memory tape. That shift was more than I could have hoped. It signified that he saw it not as a threat, but as a part of our home that enriched both our lives. I often recalled my grandmother's gentle words about altars, how they were not just religious objects, but living spaces for memory and connection. I like to believe she would be proud of how Tommy and I had navigated our differences, finding mutual respect and love. Our journey taught me that altars, whether physical or metaphorical, reflect the love we have for those we've lost, the gratitude for those still with us, and the hope for the future. Tommy's evolving perspective showed me that even deep-rooted skepticism can soften in the presence of empathy. As the anniversary of our move-in approached, we hosted a celebratory dinner with close friends. Amid the soft glow of candles on the dining table and our altar, stories of our first year together were shared. After the meal, a friend named Camilla, who was agnostic, asked if she could light a candle for her ailing mother. Though the altar had originally been my space, Tommy immediately said, of course, we do that all the time. I watched as Camilla lit her candle, her eyes brimming with quiet hope, and Tommy smiled softly in acknowledgement of how far we'd come from that first heated argument about it. After our guests departed, Tommy and I lingered near the altar, the candles still burning gently. I pressed my hand against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. I'm so proud of us. Of you especially, I murmured. He wrapped his arm around me and replied, I'm proud of us too. I used to think all spiritual practices were just foolish, but now I see they can express things that words can't capture. We stood together in silence, letting the flickering light symbolize our shared understanding. It was a testament to the fact that while we remained individuals with distinct beliefs, me finding meaning in memories and rituals, and Tommy in science and logic, we had forged a bond based on mutual respect and love. Months passed, and life carried on with birthdays, small celebrations, and the inevitable challenges. Our little altar continued to be a constant presence, evolving into a symbol of our shared journey. Whenever visitors asked about it, we'd share its story, how it once almost drove us apart and how we worked through it together. Tommy's initial discomfort transformed into a quiet appreciation for the space, and he even began contributing his own mementos, a token from a college friend, a small stone from a memorable hike. It wasn't that he adopted my spiritual views. He simply recognized the value of having a space that held memories and meaning. One day, as I was dusting the altar and replacing a burnt-out candle, Tommy came over with a small, old photograph of his grandfather. Would it be all right if I put this here? He asked tentatively. I know it's not really my altar, but I looked at him, my heart filling with emotion. Of course, I said softly. It can be for both of us. He carefully placed the photo beside the others, and I lit a tea light next to it. The flame danced over the photograph, illuminating the worn lines and capturing the gentle expression on his grandfather's face. Tommy exhaled slowly, and for a long moment, we simply stood there in silence, a quiet affirmation of our united lives. That simple act transformed the altar into a shared space. Though I still maintained it as my own personal ritual area, Tommy began to see it as a part of our home, a place where both our histories could coexist. Even though he continued to call himself an atheist, he would occasionally light a candle there, sometimes murmuring a name or simply watching the flame in contemplation. He joked that he was a spiritual atheist, a label that made us both laugh. Over time, our friends noticed the change. Whenever someone asked, "How can an atheist and a spiritual person share a home?" I'd smile and explain that it's about giving each other the room to be fully themselves, without erasing what makes us unique. It's about a shared commitment to respect, love, and understand. Our journey wasn't without its challenges, of course. We still had our disagreements over everyday things, budgets, chores, and the minutiae of daily life. But the altar, which once seemed like a deal-breaker, had become a symbol of our growth. I often remembered how close we came to a serious fight over it, and I marveled at how we managed to transform that potential conflict into a cornerstone of our unity. One evening, as I was preparing to go to bed, I paused by the altar and noticed the soft glow of the dwindling candles. I felt a surge of gratitude for the memories of my grandmother, for Tommy's willingness to embrace what was important to me, and for the shared home we had built together. Though the altar remained the same modest piece of furniture with a small drawer, its significance had grown. It now represented our combined histories, our sorrows, our triumphs, and our mutual commitment to honor our pasts while forging our future. A few months later, life presented a new challenge when Tommy received news that his dad had been hospitalized due to heart complications. Although the doctors assured that it wasn't too serious, Tommy's long-held conflicts with his father's anti-religious stance left him deeply troubled. He spent several evenings by his father's side, and one night, visibly shaken and with tear-filled eyes, he confided in me his fear that his dad wouldn't listen to the doctors. In that moment, he looked at our altar and quietly asked if lighting a candle might help him feel less helpless. I explained that I often lit a candle as a symbolic gesture, a way to channel hope and support for someone in need. Tommy hesitantly tried it, and although he maintained his atheism, he found comfort in the ritual. It was a small, profound moment that further deepened our connection. As our shared life continued, the altar became more than just a collection of religious memorabilia. It grew into a living, evolving testament to our relationship. It was a space where I celebrated personal victories and mourned losses, and where Tommy, despite his skepticism, could mark his own moments of reflection. We even began to discuss the idea of rituals in a more secular context. How sometimes lighting a candle or placing a token could be a way to honor someone without invoking any supernatural belief. Tommy even joked about creating his own science altar, with images of great scientists, blending his love for logic with our newfound shared symbolism. When our second year together rolled around, I reflected on how something as seemingly insignificant as a small table with candles and photos could have once threatened to tear us apart, and yet now it stood as a pillar of our unity. One night over dinner, I asked Tommy, "Do you ever think about how close we came to a big fight over that table?" He set down his fork, smiled ruefully, and admitted, "I think if I'd stayed stubborn, we might have lost something really good. I'm glad we found a way to understand each other." I kissed his cheek and whispered, "Thank you for trying to learn. It means everything." Our differences remained. We were still two individuals with distinct beliefs. I found solace in flickering candles, whispered prayers, and memories of my grandmother, while Tommy valued science, logic, and tangible proof. Yet we discovered that these differences didn't have to divide us. Instead, they enriched our home, making it a space of mutual respect and shared growth. In the months that followed, we renewed our lease and continued to nurture our shared space. Whenever friends visited, they would comment on the warm ambiance created by the soft candlelight and often ask about the altar. I would explain its significance, and Tommy would add, "It's a beautiful tradition she has," honoring her roots and memories. Even when someone teased him about being an atheist, he would simply shrug and say, "I do my thing, and she does hers. We respect each other's ways." That, to me, was the real triumph, a testament that love can create harmony without forcing uniformity. Then one day, Tommy approached me with a proposal that touched me deeply. He asked if I would paint a small picture for the altar, a piece that represented both of us, blending elements of science and spirituality. Overwhelmed with emotion, I agreed. In the following weeks, I worked on a small canvas, combining subtle star maps with gentle swirls reminiscent of candle smoke. When I finished, I framed it simply and placed it on the altar. Tommy studied it for a long moment, then softly said, "Thank you. It's perfect." That painting now rests alongside photos of our grandparents, saint candles, travel mementos, tea lights, and books on spiritual traditions. A beautiful tapestry representing the convergence of our worlds. Whenever someone asks how an atheist and a spiritual person can truly share a home, I point to that altar. The answer is that we both have room to be ourselves. No erasures, no forced changes. We've learned to meet in a quiet space where love, memory, and understanding transcend labels. Looking back now, I realize that our journey was not about converting one another, but about embracing our differences and letting them strengthen our bond. The altar in our modest apartment became a focal point of dialogue and shared experience, a living space where our individual beliefs intertwined with our collective light. Every time I light a candle there, I feel the echo of my grandmother's wisdom and the gentle affirmation of Tommy's support. In that glowing light, I see the possibility that two people with seemingly opposing views can come together and build a harmonious life, one built on respect, empathy, and a willingness to learn. And so, even as life moves forward with its inevitable challenges and new experiences, our altar remains, a quiet monument to our growth, our love, and our shared humanity.